I'm Rosie.
And I'm Jim.
And this is Cruising Sea Venture.
Hi everyone. Well, first, I still have to say thank you all for sticking with us during our long period of absence while we worked on our building. But finally we get to come back to the map and continue our Alaska series. Now this was actually filmed in the summer of 2018, but still lots of great stuff to look at. And like we've done always in the past, we start with our map to show you where we go in this episode. We started at the entrance to Tracy Arm, went up to the North and South Sawyer glaciers, then took an evening cruise to Mole Harbor, then on to Windfall Harbor where we got to see lots of grizzly bears, then south again, right past Mole Harbor and on to Cannery Cove. From Cannery Cove, we crossed over and went to Sanborn Canal, then around and anchored behind Reed Island. From Reed Island on to Petersburg, Alaska. From Petersburg, we went south through the Wrangell Narrows and on to St. John Harbor. From St. John Harbor to Wrangell, then from Wrangell south to the Santa Anna Inlet.
Behind us is the entrance to Tracy Arm, and we stalled until today, it's Friday, because we knew the weather would be relatively clear, and it is. The sun is out, the sky is blue, there's a few wispy clouds. That is the view up Tracy Arm, and this is where we're headed. Look at these mountains, it's just gorgeous.
As we rounded the corner, we got our first view of the North Sawyer Glacier. In our last visit here, it was quite a bit larger, and it was amazing to see on the chart it even showed us having cruised up onto the ice. Then we turned around and visited the South Sawyer Glacier, which had quite a bit more ice in front of it, so we weren't as able to get as close. Even the smallest chunks of ice made quite a thump on the hull and didn't exactly inspire you to drive on into the ice.
Alright, we decided to do an evening cruise as we left Tracy Arm. So we crossed the passage in front of Tracy Arm and entered Stevens Passage with the evening sun joining us, and we're working our way to an anchorage up that direction. We're about half hour, 45 minutes out.
Mole Harbor was a large, open anchorage, but in settled weather was a great spot to spend an evening. We've left Tracy Arm and Endicott Arm and cruised most of the way to the Pat Creek Air Observatory. We anchored in a bay last night and woke up this morning to just beautiful sunshine, sunny, warm skies, quite a epic view all around the flybridge with our morning coffee. Then it was on to Windfall Harbor and the Pat Creek Bear Observatory.
I'll wait till you get down.
No, I don't fall for that. You gotta jump.
Oh, I don't buy it.
See? Oh my god! It's
Come on,
cold!
get in so we can get our picture taken so I get the hell back up. Come on, kid, get in!
Holy crap, it's freezing! Oh my god! Get out the ladder, it's cold!
It gets better if you hang out on the ladder, Ron.
Huh?
It gets better if you hang out on the ladder for a while.
Oh, that's great. No, actually. Not bad when you get out though.
It's freezing.
We went swimming in Alaska, dude.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did.
Good job, guys.
Want to go back in?
Sure.
Okay, go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You go first this time.
1, 2, 3, go!
Well done, Mason.
This time.
Ooh, really cold.
It was colder this time, you think?
Here,
Okay, I'm done.
stand right here again, facing that way, right in front of the door.
Yeah, he is. I'm done too.
Okay, there we go. We are all getting ready to go to Pat Creek and check out the bears. And there's Ron, and there's Mason, and there's Ron. And there is the landing at Pat Creek. We got to find these little orange buoys and evidently go to shore in the dinghy and then send the dinghy off into the water off some of these lines that they have taking the boats out into the water. So the bears don't get into them.
Pat Creek requires a permit that you get in advance. Gives you an opportunity to spend all day with a limited number of people in an area where there's a lot of grizzly bears. We got a lot of video and also a lot of good photos to share with you. This is what a female grizzly with her cub looks like running at you, just to get a closer look. She then ambled on by with her cub in tow about 25 feet away from where we were sitting on a log. As this grizzly walked up toward us, the ranger continued to remind us that they're used to people being in a very specific area, and as long as we remained quiet and stayed within our little confined log space, they would pretty much just walk by, take a look, and wonder about their daily business. Here was the little cub following her along the way. We then got to take a trail for about a half mile through the woods to an observation platform in another spot further up the river where we had an opportunity to watch for bears.
Oh, that's going to be a whole bunch of leaves.
While watching the bears in the river, I turned around and saw this coming up the trail we had walked on just previously to get to our observation area. He just ambled along behind us and then went off into the tall grass to disappear again. When the bears laid down in the tall grass, they basically disappeared from view. We watched a female and her cub startle a big male. The little guy was very interested in the male, but the big guy just laid back down in the grass and disappeared again, and the bears wandered off.
We are anchored in Windfall Harbor, and it's actually quite a big bay, fairly deep. Well, not super deep, but 60, 80 feet for anchoring. At the head of the bay is Windfall Creek, which is known for bears. Well, all of Admiralty Island is. And a beautiful view of these mountainsides in this valley. And as you work your way, and we've seen bears in this creek earlier during our stay. If you work your way around the beach, we've many times seen bears ambling down this beach. And then halfway out the bay is a place called Middle Creek, where there are another bunch of bears hanging out, and we saw a good salmon run, which we probably should be able to show you. But the bears weren't, the salmon weren't quite going up the river, and the bears weren't catching them when we were there night before last. And then up at the head of the bay, about 3.5 miles up, we took the dinghy up there, is Pat Creek, and that's where we had to get our passes to go see the bears. And we got lots of good video there of plenty of bears when we were hanging out at Pat Creek. So these are the 3 creeks here in Windfall Harbor.
We've left Pat Creek, Bear Observatory behind, back there. It is a definite go-to and a definite, if we ever have the opportunity, return to. Today we're planning to cruise to Cannery Cove. It's about 55 nautical miles, so about an 8 or 8.5 hour run. It is so beautiful, bright and early this morning in southeast Alaska. We're up on the Flybridge cruising, and this is the view out the front toward our destination.
And look at the mountains where Tracy Arm and stuff is.
Over there is where Tracy Arm is, over in there. Just beautiful. Gorgeous water.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Headed toward our next anchorage on the west side of Frederick Sound. Mason running the boat at the helm. The approach to Cannery Cove.
What?
The water's so still, it's almost eerie. Cannery Cove was a really popular anchorage that we shared with a few different mega yachts. With Ron and Mason here in Cannery Cove, and Rosie of course, we're having flank steak, crab, pasta, and carrots for dinner. Pretty awesome meal on the Flybridge of Sea Venture.
Shiver me down, matey.
Epic day in Alaska, and the sun is shining.
Yeah. This was the view from Sea Venture toward the head of the bay. We also spent some time in the bay cruising around in the dinghy and checking out what there was to see.
We're headed out of Cannery Cove and off to new adventures.
Right outside the entrance to Cannery Cove was several islands, so we drifted between the islands trying our hand at some halibut fishing. We were lucky enough to catch a nice sized halibut. Of course, we never seem to be quite ready when the halibut gets to the surface to try to figure out exactly what to do with it and how to get it on board the boat. But this time we were at least successful. Our next anchorage was Sanborn Canal. Not quite sure why it's called a canal. It's really just a bay with a river in the front that we spent some time kayaking in.
We have glassy waters cruising Frederick Sound. We left our anchorage in wherever it was. We left our anchorage earlier today and decided to head over to Reed Island since the other anchorage was so windy. But we have glassy water here in Frederick Sound.
Here's our anchorage behind Reed Island. We actually anchored in 2 different spots. The first one we didn't like, so we moved.
Little red dinghy with the weed eater motor off on it, and gonna go explore the beach. And we're just enjoying this 75-degree.
We took the opportunity to fly the drone, something we don't do too often. We just have to keep working on getting more comfortable with that thing. I'm positive we're going to lose it every time it leaves the deck of the boat. But we ended up with some great views looking out over Reed Island toward Frederick Sound. You might notice there's not another boat in view. One of the great joys of boating in remote areas is the chance and opportunity to be all by yourself. We left the Reed Island anchorage about 5:15 in the morning, heading out toward Frederick Sound, with Petersburg as our destination for the day. This was our approach into Petersburg. It was an incredible cruise all day in the beautiful warm weather. We ended up docking in the larger marina in Petersburg for a few days, where we would say goodbye to Ron and Mason, and they would catch a flight back to home in Mississippi.
Here's Petersburg at low tide. Amazing weather. You can see the mountains in the distance. And this is the South Marina. Fisherman's Memorial Park.
Petersburg is a great place to provision and walk around town, which is right at the docks.
All right, we're entering Wrangell Narrows and working our way south. Woo! Should be fun. Here's marker 58. And you can see the curve we need to make here. We're keeping red to the left. Here's Petersburg, aft. And Wrangell Narrows headed southbound.
Headed southbound in the wider portion of the northern part of Wrangell Narrows. Our strategy with Wrangell Narrows, which has a fairly strong current that switches directions in the middle, was to leave Petersburg 90 minutes before high tide. This gives you, in theory, a current pushing you south right about to the midpoint of the Narrows in an hour or so, and then the current will switch directions and continue to push us south in the southern half. So anyway, if timed correctly, the idea is we will have the current with us the whole time, even though it switches directions in the middle. Picking about 90 minutes before high water slack versus low water slack at Petersburg, because around the marinas in Petersburg there's often 3 or 4 knots of current, and so to leave at the high water makes it a little better current-wise maneuvering around in the marinas. So anyway, that's the theory. We'll see how it plays out today on this beautiful sunny day in Alaska.
We're starting to get into a narrower part of the channel. There's a tug approaching, but it does not look like he's under tow. It's an 82-foot tug. And other than that, you just see a whole bunch of channel markers, so we just need to figure out the right way to go. All right, here we're heading on the chart. And that's what it looks like out the window. All right, we're continuing on and working our way around this island, and out the window you can see the green channel marker to the right and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 markers to the left, plus a couple islands.
Our next anchorage was St. John Harbor. Notice the pocket of deep water close to the boat. And this is our sunset view for the evening. Remember the pocket of deep water behind the boat on the chart? Well, the drone would tell us a slightly different story. Maybe a little bit close to that shelf.
All right, we came to check out this wreck here on the beach. Certainly it's been here a while.
There's that shelf again right behind the boat. This is at low tide during about a 22-foot exchange. Our next stop was the city docks in Wrangell.
Here's the harbor near town, I don't recall the name, in Wrangell, Alaska. Sea Venture is the larger boat out there on the linear dock. Jim's walking up. It's low tide. All right, we're walking around downtown, or working our way towards downtown Wrangell, if we can find what the downtown is. But it looks really cute. Lots of little kind of Western looking like buildings here.
Downtown Wrangell, Alaska's frontier town. Kind of has a frontier feel to it. Petroglyph Beach in Wrangell. It was a beautiful day and fun to explore the beach and find the petroglyphs on the rocks, even if they were, for me, a little bit underwhelming. But still, they're really old and it was cool, and it was a great walk in town. It's just right out of the downtown, so it's real easy from downtown. A lot of fun. After 2 great days of visiting, we're leaving Wrangell and headed south. We've left the city of Wrangell and headed south on the first totally cloudy, cool day, it seems like, in weeks. The plan for today's cruise, if I zoom out on the chart, was to go through this thin channel up here and go to an anchorage called Tom's Place. The anchorage here is, I think, considered fair, the holding, and it's exposed a little bit to the southeast direction. But we are looking at the predict wind, and it is forecasting over the next 48 to 72 hours 25 to 40 knots of wind. So we from the south. So we will bypass Tom's Place today, and making sure we go with the flow and let the weather control a lot. We're gonna go on to our next planned anchorage, which is Santa Anna Inlet, which is a protected inlet in virtually all winds, and especially from the south and southeast. So that's our destination for today. Continuing our cruise south from Wrangell. It's totally boring in the pilot house. And Rosie.
Hello. We're cooking.
Rosie's making a pork stew in the crock pot. So when we get to our anchorage, we can make some garlic biscuits and have biscuits and pork stew for dinner. We're cruising south, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to explain a little bit, because I've had some questions about our Noble Tech and our navigation systems on board and why we have what we have. And we're coming up on a very narrow little passage where you have to do what's counterintuitive to safely transit, which is go perpendicular from shore to shore. And I'll show you on the Noble Tech how it comes out looking. I know there's some reflection of the light here, but you come up and have to do this course over and around. And hopefully you can see reasonably well the level of detail provided on Noble Tech by the different colors. This is in conjunction, I can make this larger, in conjunction with what we can see on a 30-inch monitor. And so hopefully that gives you some idea of the level of detail you can see. Now, if we go to our smaller 10-inch chart plotter, this is the level of detail you see. And to me, this is much more difficult to follow. And so I just think it's a good example of what you can have and what a lot of boats do have. So people have asked about what size I would recommend in navigation systems, and it's just my recommendation. But I would say the biggest monitor that will fit reasonably on your boat is the right size. Santa Anna Inlet. We're in Santa Anna Inlet, where we came to spend a couple days while a little bit of a storm or cold front moved by. Like we showed you on Predict Wind, expected 25 to 35 knot winds out in the main channels outside of here, and I think that's proving to be true. We're like running 15 to 18 knots of wind in this inlet, which is about 1.5 miles up this cove, and it's a kind of raining sideways outside, so we haven't got the dinghy down yet. Sitting here toasty warm though, working on editing video for you and trying to solve the biggest problem of the day, and that's how to have barbecued hamburgers for lunch without going outside. So we'll see if we can figure that one out.
The wind has stopped blowing and it's a quiet morning in the Santa Anna Inlet. So we're going to go take a little dinghy tour and see what's going on and figure out what we want to do for the rest of today. The tide's going out and we're hiking up this little creek in Santa Anna Inlet towards what should be a lake up there. So we're going to go see if we can find it.
Oh, we hiked up the creek here, not too far, but it's all a big boulder scramble. It's not too easy, so we could see the lake, and now Rosie can show you our view of the lake. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit disappointing, but it looks like more of a scramble, and I keep thinking just around the next corner, but you never know. All right, we're departing Santa Anna Inlet. We're the last of the group from here last night to depart, and the sun is coming out. It's beautiful. It's really actually quite warm today, so very nice.
Well, everyone, that was a lot of ground covered in one video. But you know, I'm anxious to kind of get ourselves current, since that was from way back in the summer of 2018. But it was a lot of fun, I have to tell you, editing that video together over the last week or so. And I'm really glad we're doing these videos. I mean, not just for the opportunity for you to see them, but for ourselves, because it's you know, putting into memory all those times and events and places that I think even now I wouldn't necessarily remember all. So it's been great. It's been sweet, actually. Very nice.
And I have to say, I was surprised at how often I mentioned how wonderful the weather was. And
there's
I
a story.
did.
There's a story behind
You know,
that.
we had taken a trip to Alaska in 2006. We'd cruised north, and we spent about 10 weeks on a smaller vessel with our 2 kids, with my parents part of the time, and Ron part of the time.
Yeah, way back, and we're talking like 14 years ago.
Yes,
Our first trip to Alaska in our own boat.
And that trip obviously was very memorable to us, but in part because I think there might have been a handful of days that it was not sunny, that it did not rain. It rained every single day. We were constantly wet.
For weeks.
And so that I think is partly why I was so stunned with the weather we had in 2018.
Yeah.
And we had met some cruisers who cruised Alaska in 2017 and said it was wet all the time.
All summer.
So it truly is remarkable to cruise Alaska in the summer and have so much sunny weather.
Yeah.
And so yes, I was astounded every time because my expectations were so much less.
I think it's a real toss-up. You know, please, from that video that we just showed you, don't throw off your dock lines and head to Alaska expecting 75 degrees and sunny for weeks on end.
Because you may be sorely disappointed. We just got super lucky for the year we went.
At the same time, it's beautiful in the rain as well, but it's...
No, it's more beautiful in the sun.
But it's... okay, yeah. Yeah,
so
it is.
At any rate, so I apologize for how much I said it. I think I was just so flabbergasted the whole time.
Yep.
So, anyway.
Yep, so we really hope you enjoyed this video.
Yep.
And like I said, we enjoyed really putting it together for you and for ourselves. At the end of this here, I'm going to do a little Q&A, like I said, and I'm going to try at the end of every video to answer any YouTube questions that were left in the comments since the last video. And there's been a few, so I'll answer those after the end of this closing. And then in the next video, we'll pick up at Santa Anna Inlet. You know, we could in the videos, you know, because we do follow some other YouTube channels. We enjoy watching them, and lots of times they have, like, in the next episode section, well, if we had edited the next episode, we might be able to show you something, but that's not how our video editing world works. You know, we post it the day we finished it. Trust me, that's the scoop of how that works. And then we'll be able to get caught up and then bring you up on some current projects and stuff. Some questions about those are from the Q&A. So until next time,
wishing you
no wind and flat seas. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
All right, here's a quick Q&A where I'll answer the questions asked since the last video was posted. And I'll try to do this every time we post a video. So if you have questions, leave them in the comments. Watch the next video and I'll work on answering them. First question. Exactly what are you doing to your teak railings? Yeah, so we are painting the exterior teak railings. So to do that, parts of them have been varnished in the past, and those are getting lightly sanded, primered, and painted with any imperfections filled in. And then there's large portions that were left gray, and those are needing to be filled with resin, then sanded and filled with resin and sanded multiple times before they can finally be primed and painted. And those large teak cap rails that were unfinished were actually cracked enough to be leaking into the hull, and so that's one of the reasons we're doing it. No, they're pretty old, and so far we like the result. We'll try to make a little video that shows those. So then I got some questions about the electrical project I mentioned in our Where Have We Been video. And we are just getting ready. It's the first part of February right now. I think February 18th is the marine electrician's start date. We're hiring this job out because it's going to get a little complex. It's going to involve new, better alternators, a computer controller for those alternators, a bank of lithium batteries, 2 inverters. So not only can we have the 12 volt from the lithium, but also 110 and 220 power at all times. And then also a ground fault interrupter. And then I think I'll work on a small video too about the whole electrical project, what we started, what we stopped with, and the difference that it'll make, I think, in the end while we're cruising. All right, then I got a question about what time of the year should you travel to Alaska? Well, that's a summertime deal. It's kind of between April and September. In the spring, the weather's not quite as nice. Later in the fall, August and September, there tends to be a lot of fog. So you have to find your balance. But winter is probably not the right time. Think Deadliest Catch on TV, winter in Alaska. And then the last question I'm going to answer on this round, did you do any fishing when we were in that last Alaska trip? Well, we actually do enjoy fishing, and in this video you saw us catch a halibut. In a further video, we should have some salmon fishing. We did do some salmon fishing on that trip on the way back in Canada, and caught our limit for a couple days in a row, which basically filled up the chest freezer. And frankly, I can't remember how much we videotaped of that, but hopefully we did. And we'll give you some of those images of salmon fishing from Sea Venture. So that's it for now. If you've got any other questions or comments, just leave them on YouTube and I will work to get them answered. Thanks and bye.